Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I am ecstatic to bring to you Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm out of the Worcester area, and she is always so kind and generous with giving us fantastic information about family law, real estate law, whatever the topic is that day. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank you, Nicole, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, today we have a fun little topic that you've picked. We're going to be talking about restraining orders. Is that right?
It is. There's always a little nuances that happen with restraining orders that I don't think a lot of people understand and how it can affect your case.
So just to remind everybody, what exactly is a restraining order?
So a restraining order is basically an order that prevents a party from engaging in any kind of communication with another party. Generally speaking, it's a family member. So you're married, your husband does something, threatens your life, and you have to get a restraining order because you're in imminent fear of bodily harm. As a result of that restraining order, he's now precluded from talking to you. He's precluded from showing up at your house. He's precluded from having any kind of communication with you unless the court order says otherwise. So bare definition is you're not going to be able to talk to that person.
Well, those are good to have in place when someone is harassing you or threatening you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a good thing to have, but you don't want to abuse it. I think, unfortunately, people do abuse the system, especially in probate court. But I think if your life is in danger and you're being threatened, then absolutely that is the best tool that you can use to protect yourself.
Now, how long does the process take to get a restraining order if it is granted?
So generally speaking, you're going to have an ex parte restraining order hearing, which means you're going to go in there by yourself or with your attorney. The other party will not be present, and you will present your case to the judge. If the judge grants the restraining order, then it will be extended for approximately 10 days. And within those 10 days, they're going to serve your ex. So again, using that scenario, they're going to serve your husband with that restraining order application and the ex parte order that says, hey, you can't talk to this woman for this period of time, and your next court date is in blank days. And then obviously you're going to go in front of the judge at that restraining order hearing, probably both of you. If both of you show up, the judge will listen to all the evidence and make a determination. If the complaining party, again, in my scenario is the woman, the complaining party shows up and the defendant does not, then the complainant will most likely get it granted up to the time in which they asked for. If the defendant shows up and the plaintiff doesn't show up, then the case will be dismissed. But assuming both parties show up and the judge makes a determination after hearing, the judge can grant it anywhere from a couple days up to a year period of time.
Wow. I mean, that is very interesting. Now, you are giving this example from the female's perspective, and certainly it's probably the majority of the restraining orders you get, I would think. But do you see your fair share of restraining orders for men?
I definitely see it both ways. I think, unfortunately, based on information that clients have told me, I don't think enough men come forward to seek restraining orders. And I think in part of it is because they're men. And wait a minute, I don't care that she's being abusive. Is the court really going to care that she's abusing me? Yes. The same standard applies. And a lot of times they go, yeah, but Nicole, I'm like, 250 pounds and my wife is 100 pounds soaking wet. And she threatened me, but do I really feel threatened? Well, do you think she's capable of killing you? Oh yeah, no, she definitely had a knife. Well, then you should be getting a restraining order. So it definitely should happen more, I think. And it should be more of an equalization, but I think the stereotype is that more women get it. And again, part of it is their physique and their ability to go, hey, look, I am afraid of this guy who's, a foot taller than me and weighs 100 pounds more than me.
So it is ingrained in society that men are supposed to be manly men and they're not supposed to be afraid of women or anything, and they can't cry and all of that. And I get that. And there are certainly plenty of crazy and abusive women out there. And, you know, they absolutely should get a fair hearing and protection from the court as well. So you said that these last from a month to a year, however long they ask for it. What is it like? Can you get a renewal if you still feel threatened in a year?
Yes, whatever that renewal date is, again, it's the same process. You both have the right to come into court at whatever the renewal date, whether it's a month or a year, but come in on that renewal date and say, I'd like it extended for another year. At some point, if it's renewed year after year after year, the judge may issue it as a permanent order. However, don't count on that. And generally speaking, if you're in the family law case, they're going to kind of travel along that same schedule as a restraining order, as the divorce would be, or the custody case would be.
So that's very interesting. So I can imagine that this has a crazy effect with a custody case. I mean, what typically happens if a party has a problem and they have a restraining order against someone? Does that someone still get access to the kids? And, you know, if so, like, what's the process of transferring the kids from one parent to another if they can't be within a certain amount of feet from each other?
Well, that's one of the good reasons for that return date. So if the restraining order is out of the probate court, and the probate court that you're addressing, i.e. it's, Worcester probate court, and you're going in a custody case in Worcester, then great. You're going to probably go in front of your case that's dealing with your custody, and that judge is going to make those determinations again on the same track. Now, you can get a restraining order in district court, which obviously district court's not going to follow the same track as probate court. But in any case, probate court has the authority to amend a restraining order to say, that's great, but we're not going to include the children in the restraining order. We're only going to include that one particular person. Again, for this instance, I'm going to use the man. But we're going to, exclude that relationship between husband and wife, but we're going to allow him access to the children. And then they would amend the restraining order to specifically state that dad gets to see the children on X, Y, and Z days. And the judge would also state in there where that exchange is going to occur.
So is there a difference between what we're talking about now and legal custody? If you have a restraining order out against you, would the courts then stop and take a look at you if you happen to have the legal custody?
Well, simple answer is you're not going to have legal custody anymore. So once you have that restraining order, again, if it's against that other party, you're no longer going to have legal custody. So the person that has the restraining order against them, again, just for argument's sake, it's going to be the father. That father no longer has legal custody of his children, which means mom now gets to make the decisions regarding education, religion, medical. Why? Because the parties can't talk under the restraining order. So one person has to make those decisions. And that person is going to be the person that has the custody. So if mom has custody, then mom also has legal custody to make those determinations. There are very, very infrequent times where they're going to grant joint custody or joint legal custody with a restraining order in place.
Well, what if there's already joint legal custody in place? I mean, that is, to me, it's like so many times in these divorce proceedings and processes, people lie about each other. And, if it's about cheating or whatever, the court doesn't care. I get that. But geez, if you could really make it a case against someone with a simple lie, how do they determine whether these people are telling the truth? It's a he said, she said situation, it sounds like.
It definitely is a he said, she said situation, which is why, again, they have that return date where the judge is going to hear that evidence. Maybe the evidence is we're putting on the neighbor who's here to testify exactly what happened. Maybe we have a police report where it said dad was arrested. Maybe we have something like, hey, there's pictures where I have a black eye. Like, those are things that are obviously tangible. Now the question is, okay, do you have the black eye because you fell because you were drunk, or do you have the black eye because you were punched? Again, there's always going to be that gray area, but that's the reason why the judge is going to make a determination after all of that evidence is presented. So simple answer is, you're going to have to gather that intel, and you're going to have to present it in such a way that the judge is going to rule in your favor.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of crazy things in that regard. One of the things that comes to mind is that there's a lot of activities that kids go to. I know I'm running my kid around to activities all the time. What do you do if both parents want to be at an activity, but there's a restraining order?
Well, the easiest thing is when you know that you're involved in the children's activities. For example, I have a lot of parents that are also coaches of the teams. Well, guess what? You're going to say that they no longer can coach and that the other person gets to come. Well, that's really not going to be helpful for anyone. So those are kind of things that, if you're smart enough and you're going in there with an attorney, and once the judge rules that they're going to extend the restraining order, you go, yes, judge, but hold on a minute. Can we address these issues? If you don't address it at that time and you hire an attorney afterwards, then again, we can go into court and we can always amend the restraining order to say that we're going to be able to attend these certain events. But you have to get permission, and you just can't do it unilaterally. The simple fact of the matter is you're going to have to say, okay, usually the court will say, ma'am is going to stand on this side of the field, and husband's going to stand on this side of the field, or when we're in an auditorium setting, mom is going to always be in the first 5 rows and dad's always in the back. Like, we can do things like that. We just need to know from our perspective what that looks like, because at the end of the day, I don't know what your kid's basketball gymnasium is. I don't know how big the auditorium is. I don't know what the graduation ceremony looks like in the dance classes, all of those things. So you're going to have to define it for us so that we can articulate it to the judge so that we can have those circumstances. But the simple answer is, if you don't have that, then you don't get to go to those events.
Well, what if you just say, well, I'm going to the event anyway?
You could do that.
Come and take you away? I mean, it's a restraining order.
You can do that. And the simple answer is probably. Again, you have a restraining order against you. You see your ex come through the door and he's in a gymnasium, and you know that, hey, there's no way he's more than 100 yards away, because that's what the restraining order says. Your best bet is probably to pick up the phone, call the police. The police will come. They see him there. They will arrest him. Now, he may very well leave in the meantime, but is there a video of it? Maybe they issue a show cause hearing later on for a criminal complaint then. There's ways that they're going to address it. I've had it where people just, and it's any contact. So we're using the example in this particular case as going to an event for your child, but it's, hey, I picked up the phone and I called my ex that has a restraining order against me. Same rules apply. We're going to look at the caller ID and go, yep. We're going to listen to the voicemail. Yep, it was him. And that's going to be a violation, in which case, as a result, they're going to get arrested and they're going to be charged with a violation of a restraining order. That is a criminal offense.
So this has turned into a really big mess. If you end up getting arrested, now you've got a criminal record over this whole situation. And, we can argue about whether it was worth it or not. It probably wasn't, because now this is going to mess up a whole bunch of things, which is my next question. What does this mess up when you've got a criminal case? And, how does this affect your divorce case?
I can't even count the ways that it affects your divorce case. I mean, the biggest thing is going to be you're probably going to lose any parenting time you just had. Um, because they're going to run in the court and say, he violated the restraining order. He shouldn't have any rights. And the judge, depending on the circumstances, again, we use a phone call to mom versus activity where he made a scene that he shouldn't have been at. The judge is definitely going to take away his parenting time versus the phone call. Because again, what impact is it going to have on those children? And the simple answer is it's going to have a huge impact when the children were present and witnessed everything, and mom had to call the police. So those are the instances that, again, you could be obviously losing custody, which you've already kind of done, and now you're kind of sinking the boat on that you're not going to get it back because you're doing more stupid stuff. But now you have the issue of, okay, so wait a minute, now I get supervised parenting time, or now I have no parenting time. Those are the things that you risk. And depending on where it happens in your case, whether it be, hey, look, it's at the very beginning and it's a temporary orders and we calm ourselves down until we get to the pretrial, and 6 months later, we're in a much better place, emotionally or otherwise, or hey, this happened 2 days before trial, and now I got to go in and somehow explain to the judge why you're in jail. Obviously where it happens in your case is going to impact how it's going to affect your entire life and your judgment with the court.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess this has been, a really interesting topic, and one that, like you said, not everybody knows all of these details about restraining orders. And in fact, I mean, is it called something else in family court besides just restraining orders, or other words that you might hear that are buzzwords for this?
It's called a restraining order anywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The other name is 209A. And we as attorneys and judges kind of use them interchangeably. 209A is Chapter 209A, which defines restraining orders. So it's the exact same thing. Obviously, again, we use them interchangeably. We all know what we're talking about, but those are kind of the two words that you're going to hear.
Well, what's the difference between the restraining order and harassment per se?
Well, a restraining order, even though we've only been talking about it between a man and a wife or some other relationship like that, it's more encompassing. So a restraining order can be including any family members or anybody you've had a sexual relationship with. So you're in a dating relationship, that obviously could be a restraining order against a boyfriend. It can be a restraining order against your mother. It could be a restraining order against your brother. So it's obviously an all-encompassing. It could be an aunt or an uncle. So all of those situations are going to apply for a restraining order. A harassment order, one, has a different standard, and two, is usually between non-family members or non-sexual relationships. Because you can't, again, that restraining order has to have those family members or that relationship in order to qualify. A harassment order could be against Erica because I don't like you anymore. And it could just be that simple. Haven't dated you, not family members. So what else can I do? I can get a harassment order. So harassment order is, I've told you to stop calling me multiple times. You continue to harass me and won't leave me alone and let me live my life. Now I'm going to go and seek a harassment order. And obviously, again, there's that non-relationship, if you will.
You know what's interesting too that we really haven't talked about is that harassment has come a long way, baby, since we were kids. Because I mean, back then it's like, oh, somebody keeps calling and hanging up. Well, then you got to trace the line before there was even caller ID. I mean, it's gotten so bad. Somebody might say something to you, at school or bump into you or whatever. And now it's like full on bullying on social media and showing up places, which, I guess was in the olden days too. But I mean, there's texting that people can do to you. There's just a lot of different situations that arise now with the way technology is come come forth over the years. It's pretty scary how many different ways. In fact, I had a friend the other day who she had a breakup with someone, and she had cut him off of all social media, blocked the number, did everything she could, and then she was just trying to live her life, and the guy was sharing his Uber trips. Apparently you can tell someone where you are on your Uber trip, and so he was putting her name in so she could see where he was going all night on a boys' night out. Like, kept getting these Uber updates. I'm like, I never even thought of that. This is crazy how technology has advanced and how many ways people can harass you when you're over.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is, it definitely allows for the bullying, the stalking, all of those things that we didn't really have an avenue for before. Now we do. We have something, and again, it's a different standard, legal standard, versus, again, imminent fear of bodily harm at the restraining order level, just says, hey, this person won't leave me alone. So very different level of expertise and standards with the court allows you to get more harassment orders, because again, I need to be able to live my life how I choose to, and I don't need you interfering with it. I don't need you to bully me, and I don't need you to tell me that I'm a bad person, because I don't really care what you think. Now we have a remedy. I don't need you to follow me around and to stalk me in Uber. Just saying.
I know, it's crazy. It's like, hey, in the old days, it was like out of sight, out of mind. And, now it's almost like mental health needs to be like the top priority for people, and just learn how to move on and learn how to leave your ex alone. Well, I want to thank you. This seems like, we've got to the end of the questions. We've talked about a few other things that weren't on the list. Is there anything while we were talking that popped up in your mind, or any examples or anything else that we need to know about before we go today?
I think the biggest thing is, if somebody is seeking a restraining order against you, or if you're trying to seek a restraining order, don't do it alone. It does become a he said, she said. Your demeanor, your appearance, your attitude, your ability not to roll your eyes, and things of that nature are going to have a direct impact. And you do so much better off when you have an attorney by your side rather than trying to do it yourself. The reality is, I've had clients that have lost their jobs because they're in a field where they can't have restraining orders against them. They've lost their jobs because, there's allegations of a violation of the restraining order as a result of it. So really, this is kind of one of those things that I never encourage people to go in without an attorney. But in this particular case, I really believe that you're a fool if you go in without an attorney by your side, because these actions in this court order is going to have a future impact on you for the rest of your life.
I mean, I know from experience, and I know a lot of people know from even attorneys who are family attorneys that go through these divorces and go through family law situations. It's incredibly emotional, especially when kids are involved. And it is absolutely better to have not only an attorney that knows what they're doing and can strategize, but can speak from a calm place and really tell the judge, what your side of the story is, without bringing those negative and fiery emotions into it. And absolutely agree with that. I'm sure you've seen that in the court by people that haven't had attorneys, where, it just gets out of hand. It's just the emotion that the other side says one thing, and then you had that button push and you've exploded, and now you lose the whole thing.
Unfortunately, it happens more often than not. And I definitely think that, again, if you have an attorney by your side, you have an attorney that's prepping you, you have an attorney that's able to kick you under the desk, whatever it needs to be. Those are the things that, again, they're going to have a huge impact on your life. Really, you don't know the ramifications of it until you're in it and until you're going, holy crap. And after the restraining order issues, then again, you need to know what you can and can't do, because again, that gray area. I mean, I've had situations where they both happen to walk in the same restaurant at the same time or different times, and they didn't know who's got the responsibility to walk out the door. The person that has the restraining order against them. Because that person stays there, they're in violation because it's not 100 yards. So there are things that you're going to not know, those little nuances, or you're going to go, oh, well, I was here first. Well, great. You better pack up your lunch and get out, because the police are called. She's going to go, he's eating over there. He's 2 tables away. That's not 100 yards. And you don't want to be in that situation. So you need to have that attorney to kind of walk you through all of those scenarios.
I agree. Well, I really appreciate this. You always just give mind-blowing information. And you know, we all know like some of the basics here and there, and sometimes you get misconceptions because you get something off of TV or something that happened to your neighbor or your family member, and it just doesn't apply to you and you don't know that. So absolutely, if anyone out there has a question about family law, I cannot recommend Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee enough. Her and her staff are amazing, knowledgeable, level-headed, and they're more than capable of helping you through any family matter. So thanks so much again for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching, everyone, and have a great weekend. Bye now.